for me, in my awareness, there was high performance surf films with punk music essentially up until that point. Well, prior to those, there was also a different style of film, but for the last 10 years, 90s and, there was that style of film. And I really think of Thicker Than Water being a divergence in that medium of surf film. Came with a coffee table book, that made it different. Came with a soundtrack, that made it different. The whole style, the aesthetic of it was just entirely different, but it was actually a much more accurate reflection of my experience of surfing, because I had tried to ride pointy thrusters that were too thin, and I was just not surfing those very well. And so to see the kind of other boards being ridden, and also the focus on culture, film specifically wasn't just show up and rip the waves and bail. It was much more, it was a broader experience, than just the surfing itself. So I'm just curious, what did you set out to make? Did you recognize that there was that void in the market for an alternative style of film, or what was the intention behind it?
I wasn't thinking about the market at all. I was thinking about like a few people that I thought would really dig it, and I think anything creatively, if you set out and you think about like 5 of your friends, best friends, probably who you share a certain aesthetic, and, you share records or songs, you go, hey, you got to listen to this, and if you think about that, then it usually works. The project usually works. If you're trying to think about the market, then you're just pulled in too many different directions, and I know that too well. When you have 30 creatives on a project, it's just they all suck. But so I lost my train of thought.
What'd you set out to make? What was the concept of the film?
Yeah, so I think we said, I don't, like our first, so Jack and my first meeting on the idea, and I joke when I say meeting, but we were like, what should it be like, and we knew, like I was thinking about John Severson and Steve Pesman and Craig Stesick and kind of the stuff they had, how they shared the experience, and Jack was like, well, check this out. And he had this Herbie Mann record and he put it on. It was like flute music. And the cover was like Herbie Mann, and he's like fat and hairy, skinny pants on, like balding, the beard, and no shirt on, like greased up with the flute. It was amazing, but he put it on, and we're sitting there at Pipeline in the little back cabin they had there, and we're sitting there. We're not stoned or anything, we're just like sitting there, and we're like, I don't know, something like this, man. Like, so I'm just, it was like that much of like there was just kind of like, let's go out and like, we've seen this all with our own eyes, and it really was something that we made happy. It made us happy. Yeah. Like, let's go do it. It's kind of, we just had grew up in the same place with the same people, same heroes. And, Jack's writing music and playing songs, and I'm recording them, and just felt like there was some fun stuff we could go out and make. And all of a sudden, like, we could, and it was very simple. And, at that time you had like, Thomas Campbell was like about to make this Seedling, and I was friendly with him. We've become real close friends, but at the time there was something in the air. That was time. There was time, and certainly Andrew Kidman was doing, he was coming out. Litmus was during that time. I think that was prior to what we were doing. It was like there needed to be some kind of a shift, and I think that was, as far as like market goes, I took a VHS of it to a guy named Pi, and he ran Huntington Surf and Sport.
Oh yeah, Taylor.
And I was like, I don't know if you'd watch this, it's so different, I don't know, and he comes back and he's, I'll take 2,000.
What?
Like, yeah, no, it was crazy. It was crazy. And I didn't even have one printed yet. Like there weren't any copies yet. And I called the Jack and then my cousin Emmett, who did some of the editing and was like, there for the beginning and, co-directed the thing with us. Like, I called them and they're like, what? Holy shit. Like, and, and then a few months later it wins Film of the Year, for Surfer Magazine. And it was like, man, the hook was set. We were like, let's keep doing this. It's fun. We did not expect that.
I think I got my copy from Huntington Surf and Sport.
Classic.
Now that you say that.
Classic, yeah.
Was the film a financial success?
I paid back. Yeah, no. It made its money back.
Good.
It made its money back, and I paid Bob back the loan. Good. So I put X amount in myself. I put the majority in. And then Bob put in a chunk, and then I paid him back, and we had enough to start the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did it seem like it was just you could exercise that creativity? It would pay for itself so that you could exercise the creativity, or did it seem like there was a career path there to make a living off of? Were you doing it just for the fun of it?
There was never.
Okay.
No. Like I've got to work on dozens of surf movies, but our little body of work is, I think, like 6.
Yeah.
And there was never any delusion of grandeur that we would financially make anything. The one that actually made money was September Sessions, and Jack was like, let's just donate it to, like, there was this thing in Indonesia. I forget what it's called, but it was like, this NGO in Indo that was about, I think it had to do with malaria or something. Okay. I sound so dumb by not knowing it.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, Jack's like, we should just donate the profits to, like the people in Indo that need it, Yeah. And I was like, right. I was like, cool, I'm in. Sounds good. Yeah, that was the one that actually made money, but that was, yeah.
You haven't spoken at all about non-surf film, like Hollywood film, narrative film. Did you have any appreciation for any of that stuff, or was it all just based on surf experience?
Oh yeah, I was super into other films. Like, I didn't go to film school, of course, and it's like spotty because I wasn't hanging out in, like, urban environments with folks that were, up to speed on exactly who was doing what at the time. But I got my hands on a bunch of stuff that, informed me on some of our aesthetic in filmmaking, for sure.
Because for a first effort, Thicker Than Water is a epic first effort. You know what I mean? Like, it's a masterful film in a lot of, not just because it accurately reflects the surfing experience and the exploration experience, but it's a beautiful film, as a complete piece.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I give a lot of credit to everybody that worked on it. And it was just, I consider the genre that is a surf film is basically like a good filmmaker with a Bolex, not much of a budget, friends with surfers, part of a crew of surfers who are out to find new waves and push their limits of surfing, and in the meantime, like, have incredible times, meet people, see cultures. Like, that's generally, to me, a surf movie, and we have all these surfing documentaries that go to get the Oscars and all this stuff. Those are surfing documentaries. They're not surf films to me. And that's not taking anything away from them. I'm saying it's different.
Yeah.
Those aren't surf movies. And so we made just, going off the blueprint of, Albee and copying that kind of, and Severson and Witzigs and many more that were just like, go get out on the road with some really good surfers and capture the experience, you know?
So can you tell me about your cousins, Emmett and Brendan?
Yeah.
And what their influence was on you, because they went to film school, right?
I don't think so.
They
No.
didn't?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, but I think they both went to college.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are just classics. The biggest influence, Emmett and Brendan, was getting into trouble when we were in our early teens, because they were like very worldly at an early age, you know, and we were coming out of Ojai, and so we would tag along with them, and they would teach us to do things we probably shouldn't, and they're great characters. Very, like, it's funny because me and my brothers and Emmett and Brendan were very different how we grew up. You know, first cousins, but we grew up very differently, and so it's interesting that they've gotten into film. They've done great. You know,
I didn't know if they led the way, or were they into it before you, or was it all simultaneous?
It was kind of simultaneous.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that their sort of how they got into film was different than how, and they were on a kind of in a different trajectory, and they've gone on to do some really, really great stuff. And the surf films, they have contributed especially Emmett has contributed and been just there shoulder to shoulder with us with a lot of stuff. And
do you remember that film Big Easy Express that they did? I went to the LA premiere of that,
cool. Yeah.
like in 2012 or whatever, and I don't remember when their names popped up for me first, but their names popped up, and it was never related to surfing so much, but I knew that they were related to you, and I wasn't sure, were they cousins?
Yeah, there's
were
a
they,
confusion.
Like,
There's a big confusion there. They're like, oh, you're the Malloys, and
I think
you surf in there, and they're like, yeah, well, we do surf, and then people come to me and they're like, oh, we saw that Manny Pacquiao,
right,
or that Christopher Wallace, or
Biggie,
BIG doc you did, and I'm like, I didn't actually do that. And then at one point, Kelly's like, hey, Chris Hemsworth is looking for you, man, and can I give him your number? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I called Kelly right back. I'm like, he's probably looking for Emmett and Brendan. And then he like texts me back. He's like, oops, sorry, yeah, he's looking for those guys. You know, those guys do some pretty, like, those guys are actually like filmmaker. You know, they've been working nonstop in film for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I sort of dabble more. So, you know, I have a lot of other things going on. And in the last good over 10 years, like, I've done a lot of conservation-minded doc work and ag-centric documentary stuff. Because that's kind of the life that we're involved with more. So, and people always say, you got to make another surf movie, you know, like, and I would love to, but it's really, so like now you're traveling with, I'm 51, so I'm traveling with kids between 20 and 35, you know, they could be my own kids, you know? Yeah. So it's like a little different. And then also, most of the surfers have an entourage, and no matter what you do, it's being posted that day. So for me, some of the magic of what we got to do with surf films is, like, I could say to Conan Hayes or Rob Machado and be like, hey, we're gonna go here for 3 weeks, and I'm not positive where we're staying, but I'll work it out. We'll have somewhere to stay, and we're going to shoot 16. And I bought an old Jeep. We're set on getting to the spots. We're set on getting the spots. And it'll probably be 4 months before we get to see the footage. And they'd be like, fuck yeah, let's go. You know? And then the movie would come out in 18 months to 24 months. Yeah. And these guys are the most... these known surfers in the world at the time, and they were completely willing. Yeah, let's go. And like, kind of sucks where we're staying, Chris. And I'd be like, I know, I'll go, I'll buy dinner or whatever. And they'd be like, great, I'm in. Including Kelly. And that's just not quite doable now. Yeah. It's different. I will say that I do have an exciting one that I think will come out in the next 24 months. So, yeah, when I have more I'm excited about it. It's a good one.
Is it being shot yet?
It started being shot 20 years ago.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now I'm intrigued.
It's a neat one. I'll say that, yes, it started being shot by a different group of brothers, the Wilson brothers. They were on the North Shore, and they started a film, and it's kind of just been floating around in the ether for a long, long time, and so we're going to pick back up and see what we can make out of it.
Who are the Wilson brothers?
These guys from Texas.
Interesting. Okay. We'll record another episode then when you're
I
ready to
can't
release
wait.
it.
I can't wait.
How did 180 Degrees South come about?
Yeah. That's a fun one. So, through my relationship with Yvon Chouinard, he really I would never in a million years call myself a climber, but I have been dragged up some pretty special stuff with the climbers and with Yvon, and been able to go climbing with Dean Potter, Timmy O'Neill, or Jimmy Chin, and like these guys are incredible, and they've put up with us, my brothers and I, and gotten us into some pretty scary spots. So anyway, I was talking to Yvon about the surfing and climbing, and he brought up to Jeff Johnson and I, especially Jeff. So this is a different Jeff Johnson. There's Jack's dad, and then there's Jeff Johnson, my roommate, North Shore lifeguard, and just a great friend, about a film he had done in 1968, which was a really interesting time in surfing and climbing. And he and Doug Tompkins, who was the founder of the North Face, and they got in a van and drove from Ventura to deep into Chile to climb do the second ascent of Fitzroy, which was incredible alpine climb. And on the way, they were surfing and skiing and just road dogging it. And through a dear friend of ours, we got a copy of it. Jeff and I got a copy of it, and it just blew us away. It was A Mountain of Storms, it was called. And completely forgotten. Fred Padula made the film I think I have that right. Yeah, it's been a while. And so we saw the film, and we were just like, we got to do that trip. Surf and climb down to Chile is basically the impetus. Like when we were like, we got to do it. So that was before I worked with Yvon. We were just friends. So anyway, we start working with Patagonia and get deep into that whole project, helping Patagonia get into surf in an honest, authentic way, and that's a whole nother story. That was fun. And so we end up telling Yvon we want to do the trip. We want to do that, our own version of that trip, and we're like, and we want you to come. And he's like, motherfuckers, I'm about to turn 70. I'm like, well, then just meet us down there. Anyway, that turned into like a 5-year. I went down and checked out some like first ascents that could possibly, we could aim for, and scouted that whole chunk of the Patagonia coast with a guy named Rick Ridgway and Yvon. We went down there and we're looking for waves, not filming. And that's when he was working with Doug on those national parks, which are, that's a whole nother, thing. Got to help work with those guys on some of that. And then I convinced Jeff Johnson to commit, 2 years of his life. And then we basically, incredible Scott Sowens and Danny Motor, and did a lot of the filming, and we really we're like, let's just see what happens. And we had a good run, and we kind of kept that spirit of do whatever the fuck we want to do. And if the waves were good, we found some great waves and failed on what our goal was as far as a second ascent. on this thing called Corcovado, which in the climbing world is nothing. It'd be like, wasn't some huge feat, but we failed, and then, which was great because it is what it is, and then we ended up doing a first ascent of this climb with Doug and Yvon and Jeff and Jimmy Chin, and thank God, on the glacier, Doug's crampon broke, and so I had to give him mine, which meant I couldn't summit with the guys, which I was so happy about because I was scared shitless. And again, this isn't K2, this isn't Everest, this is scary as shit, glacial, alpine start, real climbing, but nothing. I just want to make that clear. It was nothing compared to what's being climbed out there. So yeah, and then we made a story about it.
It was a great film.
Thanks.
Really.
Thanks.
So you and your brothers were involved in kind of the Patagonia's pioneering into the surf space. Is that true?
I don't know.
Well, how did that relationship develop? I know you talked about how you met Yvon, but when you actually start working together, what was the design of the relationship? What did you expect of them? What did they expect of you? And had you already parted ways from Hurley? Had that relationship ended?
No.
Okay.
No. Yvon, like we had joked about working together, and then finally, I think, Jeff Johnson definitely was like kind of like trying, it's like it was like he was setting us up, it was like he was sort of like Jeff was there with Yvon a lot and with us a lot, and I think he saw that we knew it was a great fit, we all knew it was a great fit, and we finally got serious one day, and it happened really quickly. Yeah, it happened really quickly. And I called Paul Gomez and I said, I got to meet with you. And he was like, great, anytime. I'm like, right now. And he's like, whoa, okay. Because, he gave us our first shot.
Of course.
He believed in me and my knucklehead brothers and said, and when nobody else probably would have. And then we had, become quite established. And so I called him. I'm like, I need to meet you right now. And he was like, okay. So we met somewhere, some weird little town in California that was halfway, and we were like at Denny's or something. I'm like, hey, so me and Keith and Dan are gonna we are going to move on, and we're gonna work for Patagonia. And Paul just was like, it was to the effect like he froze for a second, and then he was like, man, I believe in you guys. I'm so proud of you. I know you have a vision for what you're doing. I don't know what the fuck Patagonia is. Like he was like, but he was just great and supportive, and it felt really strange at the time. Now people are familiar with Patagonia, and at the time, I had comments from friends being like, so you work for a Frisbee company now? Like, bizarre. You guys do hacky sack at lunch? I'm like, yeah. No, I'm just kidding. But it was at the time, it didn't seem like the obvious move for us, I don't think, and it was a wild couple of years, I was deeply involved with a guy named John Rapp and another guy named Jeff McFetridge, and Devin Howard, Ross Garrett. There are all kinds of amazing people that we got to work with, and the idea was really it was really based off of watching where the surf industry was going, and really going back to that 1968 era where it was like, go to Army surplus, go to thrift stores, canvas, cotton, just basics. And that was at that time, like real surfers weren't wearing logos, that was, so that would have been, what year was that? So that would have been 19 years ago, 20 years ago. And it was like and so we were like, let's just make basic shit. We don't, and Patagonia was known for their fluorescent colors, and we were like, let's just make just clothes. And I think surfers appreciated it, and it was, lifetime, you buy something that's lifetime guaranteed, it's mindfully, made, and that really, I don't think was super available for surfers at that time. So it seemed to resonate. And then the climbers got into it too, because they're like, we're tired of wearing what, not as Kappas put it. He's like, I love Patagonia, but I don't need gear that looks like I'm about to go fight aliens. Sci-fi clothes, I don't need it, and he was so right by it. It was such a great, quote from Nodis. But so we just made basic stuff. It wasn't complicated. I'm not a designer. I'm not into clothes at all. And it was like, just make a button-up shirt and a T-shirt with some picture of a dolphin on the front, and pants that aren't trying to be fashiony, and that was really it.
And wetsuits too.
And then the wetsuits, yeah, we were just, my brother Keith was really more involved with the wetsuits than I. Like I was more involved with helping to merchandise and have the idea for like what a kid could walk into in that retail space that was not really happening too much at the time. Like, so Cardiff was our main spot, and Patagonia always had the idea that we want our stores to be a gift to the community and work with existing structures. So we had that historic building right there, and got our hands on that. And then, I wanted to make sure there were paddle boards and freediving stuff, and stuff that wasn't really, they do 2 seasons a year, so you can't chase what's happening.
Yeah, true.
And so it was like a little bit of a different experience. And I was involved with every single aspect of that. And then we went on to Japan and opened Shibuya, and then it kind of, went from there. And it was fun.
At some point, you develop a family along the way. How does traveling the world transition to roots?
Yeah. So, I think I figured out for 20 years I was never in one country for more than like a month or two, so it was just perpetual movement, which was really great, and easy as a single person. And then I met my wife, Carla. We've been together, I think, 23 years. And for the first few years, it was just her and I together now, it was great. And then even with my son, Lucas, who's 16 now, we took him the kid, it's funny, he's been to, I think, Fiji 3 or 4 times, that he doesn't remember it. I have pictures of him and Jackson Dorian as 3-year-olds fighting over a piece of watermelon, at Tavarua, but he doesn't remember any of it. He traveled a lot. He's been a lot of places. Yeah, and then I became more sedentary, and I was also getting older where I couldn't, after the passing of, friends and watching, I wasn't ready to make the transition into jet skis and vests and all that stuff. I was like, I was ready to be like, hey, that was a good era, and getting to surf good Mavericks with 4 or 5 guys out, and having the left completely, like, I was surfing by myself basically, and I was like, you know what, I feel good about that. And still paddle out and surf big waves, that's great, but I didn't need to be on every swell, and I had definitely satiated my travel bug, like 20 years of it, and I love California. I believe it's, to me, if that's the best place still on earth, and there's so much country that you can, in these California mountains and our islands, and I kind of just took that sort of wanting to see what was around the next bend or down the creek, and just kind of applied that to here.
Yeah.
And I love California. Yeah, I really do.
There's plenty to explore.
And when people complain about, it being crowded, I sort of, I'm like, I know, yeah, there's nothing left here yet. You can be in incredible places that look like Colorado, in a half day's hike into, it's amazing what's still left here. So, yeah.
So how did that relationship with surfing change? You said you weren't interested being on every single swell, but
Yeah.
are you still surfing? What's your current
I
relationship
haven't
with
been
it?
surfing much this last year. I surf in the last, like, how many years? I was surfing a ton, at spots that, people would be like, man, you missed that swell at Rincon. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I surfed every day of that swell, just there's fun spots you can surf by yourself and good spots, So, it was kind of fun to be in front of a camera so much and then have zero. You start surfing better, I think, and
Really?
Different lines,
Yeah.
And then you also realize that your hips and your back are you're when you're young, you're surfing every day to see if you can do something you've never done before, and as you get older, if you're realistic with yourself, you're in terms of doing that magic wiggle, shred wiggle, if you're true to yourself, you're like, I'm not surfing as good as I was when I was 28. Like I'm 48 now. So it's just looking worse and worse. Like, unless you're Kelly, it's not about looking. You just start finding these just fun lines, and I started riding boards that were less forgiving, and telling myself, like, I'm just going to commit to every turn, either to completely eat shit or like make a beautiful line and stick to that. And there's surfers, there's a guy named Josh Farborough one of my favorite surfers, a big stout guy, and he builds his own boards, and they're just, it's all or nothing surfing. Yeah. Power and commitment to good lines, and that's and my brother Dan, I love watching those kind of those kind of surfers, and we see there's this huge movement of riding all kinds of boards, and I feel like there's a lot of safety dances going on. I still you watch, say, the mid lengths a lot of times are an excuse to just prance about on a wave, and it's that board is not built. You're riding it like a fun board. And I honestly, I will be judgmental about that. I'm it's not an excuse to surf soft, and just get more waves. I want to see, look at fucking pedal to the metal of that thing, man, and be smooth. Maybe you ride a 200-yard long wave and you do one turn, but think about Terry Fitzgerald on a single fin, that bottom turn was just like sparks coming off his rails, man. That. I love seeing guys that are really surfing with power and speed on all these different kinds of boards,
Yeah. So how often are you surfing now?
Right now, I haven't surfed in a couple months.
Do you miss it?
No, I don't. And I'm not done surfing. You know what I mean? You can kind of, I'm very busy. You know what I mean? There was a good swell recently, and my buddy Damon Holst, amazing guy. He's like, hey, do you and Lucas want to go fly? He's has a bush plane. He's like, let's just go see everything today, and he had my son Lucas landing on dirt runways, and we flew over all my favorite spots, and to me that was so fun to watch all those watersheds come to life, watch where the sand was going, and look at little piles of guys and go wow, those guys are stressing out right now to get the bomb because they were on Surfline. It said it was going to peak at 4:00 with a low tide, and they got to get the thing, and it's and we're just freaking cruising, and so I for sure am not haven't thrown in the towel and be I'm just gonna be an old cruiser, and I'm still freaking frothy, and I'm still gonna I get up early, I go and I want to go do stuff, but it might be working on my place here, and taking Cooper, my youngest, go. He got his first wild hog the other day,
really?
all by himself. Yeah, and came home and dressed that thing out, and to have a kid his age be able to sit there at dinner with an animal that he harvested, that's like getting a big barrel. That's like getting a stand-up barrel, man.
Well, that, especially if that's what he's into, you know what I mean?
He's super into it, yeah.
Yeah. What did he get it with? What did he shoot?
He had a 270.
Okay.
Yeah.
There seems like there would be a freedom in relinquishing the anxiety about chasing swells too. Like
there is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. And there is. And I will say the first few years I stopped chasing big swells. It was really, really hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was just completely fit mentally and physically, and the skis are coming in, and like it was kind of like in a way at that time, like social media, it was like went from like, it was like all the set, there was like this little group of people that were surfing big waves and really, really committed to it. And then it was within a year, there was hundreds of big wave surfers, and there was big wave tours, and there was, in a way that was cool, but my ego was like watching guys that wouldn't paddle out on any of those big days, and then skis come in and they're double XL world champions. And I remember some of those guys were straight pussies, and now they're, and so my ego made me jealous of that for sure, for a time. And then, do you know Stephen Kotler?
No.
He's a writer, and he wrote,
No, I don't.
He's written some really interesting things about, your endorphin and dopamine, and, that like when you walk away from that stuff, there's a bit of a void, So I felt that for a few years, but then I also realized, I'm not surfing Chopu like that at 48.
Right.
I'd be stupid to, I've seen guys at that age try to do that, and it's kind of sad, they're usually divorced by that time, and, it's like, they think it's never going to end, but I think it's, if I do surf big waves, I can go out and just be smart. I have nothing left. I have nothing to prove.
Yeah.
But yeah, experience will allow you to surf bigger waves until your late 60s,
Because you could avoid
where
disaster.
to be and where not to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you do get caught inside, you know how to handle it. You know what to do.
Yeah. How closely do you follow professional surfing at this point?
Yeah, I don't. I'm spoiled in that if something really significant is going on, my good friends will text me, and they'll be like, holy shit, you got to see this. Go online. It's whatever.com, and Kelly and John are in the finals at Perfect Chopu. So I'll be like, oh shit. And I'll watch it,
Gotcha.
And so that allows me to not deal with the minutia of the daily tour or the, what's going on, Whenever there's good surfing and good waves, I definitely love to watch good heats or good waves. But I don't follow it.
Are there any surfers that you're excited to watch nowadays? Like if you're scrolling Instagram. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't even know if I don't get super excited, but I get, I'll be interested. Nowadays there's so much stuff that you see, and like now, like honestly, like if you've been surfing this long, like a guy can stand up and I can pretty much know what he's going to do. You can tell, like if he's like little trophy stance and I can see the lip line, and I'm like, hey, 8 pumps, big air. Awesome. And that's great. It is, but I'm not going to watch the rest of the clip. Whereas like, I don't know, man, there's a second a guy stands up and, you can be like, oh, I'm going to hang in for this one, Yeah, like I like watching Connor Coffin surf and Parker. They're both different kind of surfers. I think that kid Mike February is always fun to watch. You know, he's so neat to see. He's a perfect case of like when he was on tour. Was he on tour for a sec?
He was on for 1 year.
Yeah, and had no interest in his surfing. Like it was just like, okay, great, you know, awesome. Another kid makes the tour. Stoked for him. And then when he got turned loose to surf the way he really wanted to, wow, that was pretty neat. You know, he's surfing great. I don't know. Who are you watching right now? What are you digging?
I do love Parker Coffin. Yeah. Torrin Martin. If you're familiar with him.
Yep.
Mason, I'm entertained by.
Yes. Mason's amazing. I love watching him surf. Yes.
On the tour, though, Ethan Ewing.
I can't name him. I can't picture
Australian kid. Surfs like Andy, actually.
Oh,
wow. John.
Yeah.
Always.
Yep.
Kelly.
John and Kelly, yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I was having this conversation. Like, I used to love Kelly's surfing growing up. And then I realized recently, for the last decade, the only surfing I've really seen from Kelly was on tour. Like, it seems like in the last decade, he just hasn't, I haven't seen a ton of free surf clips. I certainly haven't seen any feature films, you know, focused on him. And so I found myself falling out of fandom with Kelly, but it was only because I was only watching him competitively surf and he wasn't winning contests anymore. And so when I do get to see those free surf clips of Kelly, they're infinitely more interesting to me than the heats that I watch with Kelly.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
yeah, my take on is like over the years, like he's just such a clutch surfer. Like he'll surf to figure out a board. Like most of us are like, this board feels good or it doesn't. What do you think? Kind of thing. Whereas Kelly is literally feeling every centimeter of his rails and his fins and his bottom contour, everything. So you can see Kelly go out and all he's doing is working on a board, working on this board. And he'll be like, cool, 4 to 6. Weird wind board. Okay, cool. Boom, done. Okay, and then, you know, he's figuring out boards. And so that's probably what you're seeing is him. He's just being the tradesman that he is in terms of figuring out a board. And then if, like, the camera's rolling and the waves are really good, like, he'll do crazy shit. But, like, in a way that, so it's really important to say, is like, it's not because he wants to be in another surf movie. It's that he sees an opportunity to document something that's never been done. You know, he's like, okay, well, like, you know, he needs a challenge. He needs like, okay, I'm going to do something people haven't seen.
yeah.
And then I think his best surfing's in heats. He loves that competition. He loves that being behind, you know, all odds. Like he loves that. And he turns into, anybody that knows him is like, you know, he turns into a different person. It's like so amazing to witness. And I know they say that about the greats in other sports. Like when the shit's hitting the fan, like they get a focus that is really special to witness. And you kind of stand back and and then 99.9% of the time, whatever that goal was, or, you know, it is, accomplished. So yeah, that's neat to see. And
it is. It's really special, actually.
Yeah.
I wish I had a film crew with me to showcase to our listeners where we are currently. Can you tell me, what is this property? How did it come to be? How did you find it and all of it?
Yeah. So we're in Los Alamos, California, which is only less than an hour north of Santa Barbara. The closest coastline to us is like Point Conception. And yeah, this was, you know, obviously it was Chumash, you know, for, you know, as far back as 15,000 years. And then, yeah, when the Spanish came in, it became land grant. And then over the, you know, decades and centuries, it's been cut down into smaller Generally those land grants were about 30,000 acres. And so now what we have in this region, it's all agrarian, it's all cattle. And the flatlands are farmed either for hay or vegetables. And a lot of, 4,000, 5,000 acre ranches. And then we landed on a little 100-acre spot on a little mesa. We're surrounded by those bigger ranches, a lot of vineyards now too. An old man named David Holden lived on this place for 30 years with his family, and he liked to collect stuff. So, and there was no house here, so they had a trailer, and they were getting ready to move. They think they moved to New Mexico, and we ended up here. Yes, I lived on the San Julian Ranch. I lived on the Hollister. Lived in Jalama. Jalama was a real special place for us. So I kind of was in this region on different places, and then we had the opportunity to land here. And yeah, it's been a wild ride, and we built a place, and that's where we're raising the kids. So,
and what do you do with the land, with the 100 acres?
Well, my wife grows greens that she sells at her little store in town, and also to local restaurants. And then in the last 6 years, we've had sheep. My daughter Pearl had a little egg program. We're up to about 60 chickens at one point. And then when there's grass, we run cattle in our little canyons here. So, we do that. To have we keep back a steer for our own family, and then we have just like 20. It's like a little cow calf, right? So we have 20 head of cows, and we put a bull on them for X amount of days, and then they have their calves. We raise those calves and then sell those calves. So it's tiny. It's a tiny thing. I have to have my day job to do it, and it's a lifestyle thing. And my younger kids are real into rodeo, so for them to grow up with cattle and that daily experience is that's how they're growing up.
What do you do with the sheep?
We sell them to. We have lambs every year. So we sell the lambs, and then there's a local restaurant. There's a couple local restaurants that, and they'll say, hey, we could use a lamb. So I'll go out and I'll harvest them, skin them, gut them, and then produce a really beautiful carcass for local restaurants.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then we keep the hides. Floating around the house here.
I saw one outside hanging on the lighting fixture.
Yeah, that one's not done yet. So I got it hanging outside, out of the rain. Right now we're in a big transition. With 2 months, we wanted to have all our seed in the ground right now, but with the rain, we're waiting. And for things to dry out. I started to work that little tiny field right here, and halfway through just got sunk on my back right. So it'll be easy to get out and wait for it to dry up, and I'll haul that out and get that little field done. And then there's the one on the way in by the cattle guard, and it's amazing how much you can produce, in a small area. So yeah, we're having fun with it.
Small's a relative term.
Mm-hmm.
Any of your kids interested in surfing?
I definitely haven't raised surf dudes, and it's they can surf. The little one hasn't surfed yet. So my son is, he's interested in aviation. He's a great student. Really good with a wrench. He can work on trucks and tractors. And he's this summer he's done all of his qualifications, and it looks like he's going to be a state lifeguard. But not really beach bummy. Not. If I had seen a deep drive to do it, I would support it, just like my dad supported us. But, he's got 2 more years here on the ranch, and then he's going to have to, make a living doing something. So I've kind of seen his interests in other things, and yeah, he can surf, but it's, you know, he can also work on a truck. And where he grew up surfing, there wasn't that culture of airs and stuff. It wasn't really his little crew. He had a great little crew. He grew up surfing this little reef with eelgrass and nobody really around him, and nobody was looking at clips, and they weren't really aware of the surf contest world. So he didn't, you know, that's what fosters these great surfers. Like, you know, all the guys you see out there, like they had this little crew, whether it's San Clemente or Gaviota, or well, not Gaviota actually, but like you, they, you know, you're pushing each other, pushing, and they didn't really grow up around that. His friends were like, hey, there's the Rincon Classic, and they would go down and come back kind of like, well, we thought we were pretty good, and like you get down there and just kids are unbelievable. But the kids around here, you know, you can stick them up in the, you know, in the headwaters of the Sisquoc and like leave them, and they'll make themselves a little fort, and, you know, make some kind of slingshot or something. Like they're just kind of a little bit more punchy kids, I guess. Yeah, so we'll see.
Well, you've given them a lot of opportunities to pursue whatever they want, and that's amazing.
It's kind of what my dad did.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, here it is. I mean, I was born when my dad was 20, 21, and he was still, like, I vividly remember, you know, him riding a saddle bronc on a Saturday, and, you know, a month later we're down in Baja with, you know, some gear he'd put together, and so he was still a kid, is my point. And so we just followed him like little ducklings, like wherever he went, he would take us, you know, so.
Yeah. Well, final question for everybody is just, what was the last surfboard that you rode? Mm-hmm. But in general, what are you riding?
Oh, man. So the last board I rode was, I get the Greg Littles, the hulls. I was introduced to those through Matt Miller and Kirk Putnam in probably 83 was when I started seeing those guys ride those, you know, like it was really cool. You might have like I said, like George Greeno on a mat, and, you know, KP and that whole crew, and but I wasn't riding them,
right?
You know, and then KP's like, he's like a drug dealer with hulls, right? He's just like, dude, I got one for you, you know, and that was, God, when was that? That was a long time ago. And then I've always had one in my quiver, you know, and I ride them a little, like probably 7.2s, you know, and KP, I always make sure I have something, you know, and he'll give me stuff. Klaus, I got some Klaus's as well, and yeah, those make you, you know, they make you commit, like I was talking about. Like there's no fucking around with those things. Like you pick a good line and you commit to it, and yeah, I really enjoy riding those, and they keep you on your toes.
Can you explain the difference to listeners who haven't ridden displacement hulls? What is?
Yeah, it's hard to explain. You know, it's like the illusion of speed. Like there's so many sort of like, there's a little sort of language in the whole crew in terms of like how they work, and it's really, I mean, it's for me, everybody's different, you know. For me, it's just like shifting my surfing from like bottom turns used to be like, okay, I got to get enough speed to do everything up top, right? It's all about the lip. And like hulls is the beauty of like just giving everything you have to that bottom turn. It's, you know, the amazing part about that kind of surfing really is the bottom turn. And then just having the like ability after a good bottom turn, it slings you up towards the trim zone, and then that trim of just that free fall of just you know, over the course of, you know, 30 yards, just coming off, staying on that lip line and then coming down with it. And hopefully the lip is just like right at your waist or your shoulder, and it's just right there. And you just sit in that spot, and then do it again, for me. Like, if you're going to ride hulls, you're going to see how big of an arc and cut back you can do. But once you've like fallen enough times and then finally accomplished that, like I don't spend I'm just about that bottom turn and that big long trim, man, where you're just in that sweet spot in the right in the pocket,
Mm-hmm.
That's honest surfing to me. And I get a kick out of guys that are like trying to do all this stuff on a hull, and it's like, that's great. I mean, whatever you want to do. It's like performance longboarding, like guys putting a thruster on a longboard and tons of rocker and being like, this guy actually did an air on a longboard, and I'm like, grab, that's awesome, man. Like, to me, it looks, I'd rather see like a car wreck than that personally, but that's the beauty of surfing, and everybody gets a chance to do their translation, and so that's the whole. And then skip fry made me an eagle, so that's always like a go-to. That's another board built on the idea of honesty. You just, I don't know, put your feet together, stand way back, and just like look for fish.
I said that was the final question, but one more question.
Okay.
Do you have any surf travel plans? And if not, is there anywhere that you would still love to go that you haven't been?
Okay. And I've talked to a couple people about it. Everybody's keen. And then I'm like, I can't do that trip right now, but I want to go to Moscow. Anybody out there, if you want to do this trip, do it. It's no secret, because this starts in Moscow, and then you get on a train there, and then you go, it's like the Siberian, express. Yeah. And then you get as close as you can to Lake Baikal.
Okay.
So that's the biggest freshwater body of fresh water in the world. Like our lakes here in America like surface area might be bigger, but like this one's so deep. And it's like when the continents split, there's seals in it. Like there's freshwater seals. The only ones in the world are in Baikal, just to give you some kind of a scale on how like tectonic plates are involved in making this like many, but, and so I've done a bunch of research and actually found pictures where there's like, I'm not saying I found good waves there. I'm saying I have photo evidence of like full blown like barreling shore break, and there's enough fetch with the right wind that I guarantee you there's more than like Lake Superior type novelty waves. Like there's something there. So Moscow, Siberian Express, Lake Baikal, that's the one I want to do.
Lake surfing.
I don't like the idea of lake surfing. It's not lake surfing. This is Baikal. This is different.
But for the record, it is. For
the record, it is.
Fascinating.
But yeah. But generally, I'm not interested in lake surfing.
No, I get it.
Or pools. But that to me would be so fun. It would take like 2 months, Like by the time you ride the train and then wait for the thing to do it, it'd be amazing. Go check out some seals.
Amazing. Sounds like a film opportunity too.
Definitely. It could be, it could be a good one. It would be cool to it'd be cool to find some musicians and be like, your guys are coming with us.
Yeah.
Just make a record on the train the whole time. Get some so this is what you do. You get some like street musicians, and then you teach them how to surf on the train while you're going there. Like by the time they get there, they can totally surf, but you teach them on the train, and then the album is set to Dostoevsky. So all the lyrics are just out of a Dostoevsky. It's like Crime and Punishment, the surf movie. There you go.
I see it.
Is that?
I see it already.
Yeah. I think that that's my next trip.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Chris, thanks for a wonderful experience out here.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
I really, I'm a huge fan of what you guys do what you do.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's such a fun chance to catch up, and I really appreciate you coming all the way out here to.
I feel honored, man. This place, honestly, it's incredible. Even just the drive out is so incredible.
It's pretty quiet, so I appreciate the chance to bullshit with somebody. It's fun.
Thanks.
All right.